You say that environmentalism is to blame for the global warming. That's a weird claim, isn't it?
It is not weird at all when you study the history of all those social engineering movements, from communism and national socialism to the international aid and environmentalism. They all end up harming precisely what they claim to protect. Take communism, for example. It was supposed to free the labor, and instead it ended up in slavery. Mm, Tens of millions of people were enslaved in the Soviet concentration camps. Or take National Socialism. It was supposed to protect the Germans, and yet it left Germany in ruins. Something like 10 millions of Germans dead, several million German women raped, and Germany scorned. Or take the aid for Africa. It was supposed to help the Africans, and today we see that Africa is poor because it has received too much aid. Or take the minimum wage laws. They again were supposed to help the working class, and yet they led to unemployment, which means that actually the working class was worse off because it was protected by the do-gooders. And if the environmentalism ends up harming the environment, it will be just more of the same. It's not weird at all. It's what is to be expected.
Okay, but environmentalism is about the environment and it is not a social engineering movement.
Not really. When you look at what they're promoting, the environmentalists, they always promote things that affect our lifestyle, how we travel, what we eat, and so on. And at the same time, they're against the only solution to the global warming that could really solve the issue: nuclear energy. So
Mm.
one is left with the impression that environmentalism is not about the environment; it's just an excuse to socially engineer the society, to push for their agenda, just a vehicle for their power grab. Given that nuclear is the cheapest form of energy, it would replace all other forms of energy without any new regulations, without any activism, without the need of any international treaties, and it would make the environmentalist movement redundant, unnecessary. And this tells us a lot about what the real aims of the environmentalists are. They're not about the environment. Environmentalism is not about the environment. This is the thing to know. Environmentalism is about something else. It's about engineering society.
Okay, but I'm on the internet and social media all the time, and what I always see is that nuclear energy is dangerous.
Statistically, it's the safest form of energy out there. I mean, there is a big difference between what's perceived as dangerous and what is really dangerous. Take, for example, the most dangerous animal. I've done this experiment with many strangers, asking them what do they think the most dangerous animal is. And the answers usually include some mixture of lions and tigers or and sharks, or my and mine. uh, so the sharks are always there, and of course snakes and so on and so forth. And almost nobody guesses what the most dangerous animal for humans out there is, and it's the mosquito. Mosquitoes kill over 1 million people per year because they spread malaria, and sharks kill something like 10 people per year. And yet, everybody is afraid of sharks, nobody is afraid of mosquitoes. I mean, you could not do jaws with mosquitoes. So again, and this applies to the nuclear energy. Everybody assumes that nuclear is dangerous, and yet statistically, something like less than 100 people have died of it throughout history. That's all. And if you compare this to other forms of other energy, uh, it's in terms of safety, they don't even come close. Uh, Take coal, for example. So coal, there are new and new studies coming all the time, and they raise the number all the time. And at least 1 million people per year die prematurely from using coal as an energy source, and the actual number could easily be several million per year. And that's just for 1 year. And with nuclear, it's less than 100 throughout history.
Okay, but renewables statistically are also safe and are also low carbon.
Well, again, not really. These statistics have been compiled using accountancy gymnastics. They disregard the storage, the decommissioning, and the additional infrastructure needed for the renewables. And this is how they have come with numbers that suggest that the safest form of energy and the lowest forms of energy in terms of carbon footprint are solar and nuclear. But if you factor like I said, the storage, a problem that exists with the renewables, and obviously not with nuclear, the decommissioning and the additional infrastructure needed for renewables, uh, they're neither as safe nor as carbon neutral as nuclear. So nuclear is number one in every respect. It's the silver bullet.
But the technology is getting better and storage will be improved.
Well, storage will be improved. Anything could be improved eventually, but no improvement can overcome the laws of thermodynamics. And this is the problem with renewables, that they storage is inherently bad because it means more energy conversions. Now, let me explain. Uh, Take, for example, solar energy. So, first, there is one conversion from the solar rays that hit the solar panel to electricity. And you lose actually, most of the energy just there. Then you convert this electricity into via some chemical process in a battery, say you're using batteries. Uh, you convert it into some chemical energy stored in the chemical bonds. Okay, but you lose a great chunk of the energy there as well. And then you have yet a third conversion. When you convert the energy stored in the chemicals again into electricity. And every conversion means more inefficiency, more complexity, more things that could go wrong. And this will never be solved. Uh, Energy storage is inherently bad. It's an inherently convoluted way to deal with a problem. We need an energy source that doesn't require storage. And for example, coal doesn't require storage. You could simply store the actual coal. Uh, Nuclear doesn't require storage. And this kind of narrows the choice really we have, because coal releases CO2, not to mention the other particles that kill at least 1 million people per year. And nuclear is clean. Nuclear is perfectly safe and clean and green, and it releases nothing in the environment.
Okay, so you say that decommissioning is a problem with renewables, but nuclear reactors need to be decommissioned as well, don't they? And then there's nuclear waste. At least when we decommission renewables, we are not left with nuclear waste.
Well, actually, paradoxically, the waste that solar and wind leave is way worse than nuclear waste. First of all, because it is, in terms of quantity, is way, way larger. Nuclear waste is the only way, the so-called nuclear waste, because there is no such thing, but I'll come to this. Nuclear waste is the only type of so-called waste that could be totally contained because the quantity is very small. If we are talking about the quantities of nasty chemicals that are released when you decommission solar panels, we were talking about millions of tons. It's a different order of magnitude. But the main thing that is missed about nuclear waste is that there is no such thing. I mean, the very phrase nuclear waste is propaganda. It doesn't reflect reality. It's a PR stunt. And that's because what they call nuclear waste actually is unspent nuclear fuel. It could be spent even today, let alone in the future. We already have reactors that could run on the so-called nuclear waste. Here's the irony of this, because this fuel is not spent, given that because of the fact that we use outdated models from refined 1950 nuclear reactors today, and we use them because the development of the nuclear energy has been artificially hindered by the environmentalist movement. The environmentalist movement has tapped into the fears the public has of everything nuclear, and they're using it to hinder the development of nuclear reactors. So, in other words, we have the so-called waste because of the environmentalism. They create the waste. And after they have created the nuclear waste, they complain that there is nuclear waste. This is the irony. This is the idiocy of the situation. All you need to understand the role of the environmentalists when it comes to the global warming is to compare two industries, the computer industry and the nuclear industry. So the computers from the 1950s used lamps. Not many people today even know what it means. There were no transistors, let alone chips. So there were those lamp valves. And as a result, the computers used to cost millions of dollars, to be as bulky as houses, literally, to consume enormous quantities of electricity. They were not environmentally friendly at all. And they used to work for, say, half an hour. Then one of these lamps will burn, and a team of highly qualified and highly paid technicians will go through all this enormous, gigantic machinery to find the burned lamp and replace it, and then it will work for another half an hour. A computer today would be baffling to a computer engineer from the 1950s. And now let's see the nuclear. A nuclear engineer from the 1950s would understand very well a nuclear reactor today. Yes, today's reactors are more refined, they have more backup systems, they're computerized, blah, 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 but the basic principles are the same. A computer engineer from the a nuclear engineer from the 1950s could work as a nuclear engineer today. What's the difference? Why one of the industries did this tremendous advance and the other was stifled, the other is still stuck in the 50s? Well, the difference is that the computers were left to the market, the development of the computer technology was left to the market, which meant that the industry employed competent engineers who developed the computers, and today the computers are both dependable and cheap and small. While the nuclear energy was heavily regulated, it was left, which means that it was left to politicians and, of course, to campaigning lobbies, of which the environmentalists are the main lobby. And here's the result today. Nuclear today is not widespread, it's not cheap, and it's outdated. And all this is an artificial problem that is self-imposed. It doesn't need to be like this. It is like this because instead of being given nuclear being left to competent engineers and to market entrepreneurs, it is left to PR artists who make a career out of fear mongering. And since all this translates into more CO2, because less nuclear means more CO2, the conclusion is a very simple one. More environmentalism, more CO2. Environmentalism harms the environment. And I could go even further. I could say that environmentalism actually causes the global warming. Yes, it's not the environmentalists who release CO2 in the atmosphere. Certain different industries all over the world do that. But these different industries would easily choose nuclear over the other forms of energy if nuclear is the cheapest, and nuclear could easily be the cheapest form of energy. If only the environmentalists get out of the way.